Welcome to MedEvidence, where we help you navigate the truth behind medical research with unbiased, evidence-proven facts, powered by Encore Research Group and hosted by cardiologist and top medical researcher, Dr. Michael Koren.
My name is Dr. Michael Koren, and I'm the host for today's session of MedEvidence, and specifically our series, Two Docs Talk. And in this series, myself and one of my colleagues get together and explore a medical topic together. And it's my great pleasure and privilege to welcome Dr. John Rowda to the program today. And John and I have known each other for a very long time. We're colleagues in the Encore Research Group. John is an ophthalmologist and a tremendous clinical researcher. And he and I have worked together on a lot of projects in the past. But John has gotten really interested in informatics lately, which is the science of understanding how to get information. And John and I thought, wow, what a great topic to discuss on our MedEvidence broadcast, specifically Two Docs Talk, how to look up things.
Well, thank you for the introduction. Thank you for the kind introduction. And it's a very interesting subject with too much information coming into our homes and computers. We hope to enlighten people, maybe teach you what we do.
Yeah, so you might want to start. I know we both love history, and I think you told me about a Mark Twain quote. Maybe you'll share that with the audience, and that's a good place to start in terms of insight into how you get information and why it's important, not only the information you get, but the process by which you get it.
This is the exact quote I found. The trouble with the world is not that people know too little, it's that they know so many things that just ain't so.
I love it. I think that it speaks to the internet and the internet age that we live with, that there's so much information that comes to us. And one of the things that I like to ask our patients and my colleagues is, where do you go for medical information? And it's interesting is that I would say that 95% say, I just Google it. So maybe you can kind of run through a little bit with the audience what that means when you just Google something. What process happens that will either give you a good result or maybe not such a good result?
Well, there are several. We've been discussing this. First, you can ask a biased question, and then you get a biased result. And a couple that I thought of that are kind of benign but enlightening is to Google, why is chocolate bad for your health? Why is it good for your health? Or research on chocolate and health. And you can do the same for coffee and look it up. What recently I learned was that if you have one source or a source that is biased, or you like to look up conspiracy theories, even if you ask a unbiased question, because of your history, your computer is going to take you to a biased site. So it's very important to learn and vet your resources and the sources of the answers, not just the answer.
Yeah, and that's really, really important. So our history of searching is saved, as we all know, and that actually influences the information that we get. And so it is this constant reinforcement of an idea, whether or not we actually believe the idea at first. Correct. Or whether or not that idea is balanceable with other equally good ideas. And like a simple example of that, this actually dawned on me probably about 6 months ago. And I get a lot of news on MSN.com. And I like them in general because they have articles that come from the left, they have articles that come from the right, so I can hear all sides of arguments and different things. But I was commenting that they were having a lot of articles lately about the Beatles. And I said, wow, isn't that interesting? You wouldn't expect that people would want to know that much about the Beatles. And I was getting into, why John Lennon wrote this song, or why John Lennon and Paul McCartney had a fight about this, that, or the other thing, and getting into some of the details about their relationship. And I was scratching my head that, why would people be that interested in it? And then I realized that they thought that I was interested in it. And they were pushing all this stuff to me because I happen to love music, I happen to love the Beatles, and I happen to also love musical composition and understand why people do things in certain ways when they compose songs. And so obviously that became part of my profile, and every day I was getting a new article about the rivalry / cooperation of John Lennon and Paul McCartney. And so there's obviously a lot of stuff out there, but this is what was being pushed to me. And of course, just the fact that it was pushed to me is going to make me more likely to consume that rather than learn about how hip-hop artists construct music, which I'm also interested in, or how classical music is making a resurgence, or whatever the case may be. So this selection bias is really super important.
And my contribution would be that we're all biased. Everyone's biased. It just, you have to understand your own bias, and whatever source you go to. If I like to read the Wall Street Journal, but even health issues, they're going to talk about how it's affecting business or harming business. That's what they care about.
Right.
I think my personal bias is that I like the public health, the greater public health of the nation and of my patients particularly. That's what I'm interested in. And so that's my personal bias. I want the healthiest patients and the healthiest nation.
Right. And we'll talk a little bit more about this, but we both spent a lot of time doing clinical trials and interested in clinical trials. And one of the key elements of clinical trials is that we work very hard to eliminate biases as best we can and to create a structured experiment that becomes an answer box. So people always want answers, but the fact is that we don't know the answers for everything. And it's nice that we have this environment that we work in called the clinical trials industry, in which we can actually ask a health care question and then come up with an unbiased answer, because the hypothesis is put out there and then we blind everybody. So we don't know who's on what. And therefore the information comes in and it's not, or I should say, less subject to biases.
Another bias, that our own personal bias is very, very strong for our personal experience. You can have a study of thousands of people led by world-renowned experts and scientists, but if that result doesn't match what's happening in our family, we doubt it, and often go just with our personal 5 friends, how they responded to a treatment or a program, and that's very hard to overcome. You have to be a very highly trained scientist to be able to push that aside.
Yeah, and the other major issue that we deal with is recency bias. So it's sometimes very natural to think that what's happened recently is more likely to happen again, rather than looking at things over the cycle of time. And understanding cycles of time are extremely important in terms of good decision making. And you see it all the time in the stock market, for example. We know certain things that have held up because of the course of time. For example, when the Fed raises interest rates, that tends to lead to poor stock market performance and vice versa. But often in the very short run, in the last days or weeks, we make judgments based on that and then seem surprised when things change a month down the road, when in fact, over the course of time, it's not a surprise at all.
Yeah, I've read Warren Buffett famously made a bet against 4 hedge funds that if he took the S&P 500 for 10 years and they did their day trading and all these fancy moves in the stock market, that he would win. And the research shows he would, and he did. He beat 4 hedge funds just using an index S&P 500.
Yeah, beautiful. I love it. So one of our goals, and it's listed on our coffee cup here, is to find the truth behind the data. And so this is a MedEvidence program, and we're all about exploring the truth. And the truth is not a straight line. The truth moves in and out. She hides in the weeds sometimes, and you have to kind of bring her out. But it's eventually there if you work hard enough.
And you don't look for 100% agreement among experts. That confuses people also. You're looking for a consensus. There's always going to be an outlier, or maybe even a small, significant percentage who don't agree. You have to go with majority of evidence.
Absolutely. And we're going to talk about this in our next section when we get into some more specifics about things that are controversial and where the truth may lie.
Thanks for joining the MedEvidence podcast. To learn more, head over to medevidence.com or subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform.